What's up, basement dwellers? Welcome to another edition of Podern Nerd as we talk about the finale of not only Loki Season 2, but I think it's fair to say Loki as a show. Joining me as always, Cheever.
I would also argue the end of Loki altogether as well.
Yeah, I think it was a nice feather in the cap when it comes to the character. By the way, I'm the Dace Man. I don't know why I just assume that you people know who's hosting this by now, which is completely unfair because in December we're going to switch it up and you and I won't even be doing these. Anyway, Loki finale. We have been on the edge of our seats all season trying to figure out which way we're going to go with the God of Mischief. And I don't think anything we predicted was right for the most part. There was no cameos. So spoiler alert, if you were looking forward to a cameo, no cameos. Unless you talk about the recap played a little bit of Avengers from 2012. What were your thoughts on the finale, Mr. Cheeve?
It's a waste of time. A waste of fucking time. Like, you could have gutted 3/4 of the second season and still would have made sense.
So they did to me what every Disney Plus show has done to me thus far is I am hooked. And I mean, I'm fucking hook, line, and sinker all the way to like the last 5 minutes and go, what the fuck? Really? That's the ending? She-Hulk did it to me. Ms. Marvel did it to me. WandaVision, thankfully, they did that out the gate. They just pissed me off from episode 3. It seems to be, and maybe we're spoiled. We had 10 years of this intricate story that was well woven. Everything was leading to a final end point. And we kind of knew that, like, hey, there's stones. We got to find the stones. It's going to lead to Thanos, who's also looking for the stones. So you kind of had a rough outline of where they were going. This, we were told, hey, we have a multiverse saga. Kang the Conqueror, Kang Dynasty, is the next big Avengers movie that's going to bring them all back together. And we have seen 3 variants of Kang and no fucking answers or no cohesive story that was as intricate as the Infinity Saga, and it's pissing me off. What are your thoughts? I'm going to stop ranting.
I mean, I think the shows are too afraid to touch the cinematic universe. They want to be a part of the cinematic universe. They want the IP of the cinematic universe, but they don't want to interfere with long-term projects, which doesn't make any sense to me because this would be a great opportunity to start pushing the Marvel IP even further, right? Watch the show to understand the movie, or the show will have this like cool, unique insight of what the future will have for you. And right now, we just don't have any of that, so it's just like, why bother watching?
Well, I mean, immediately after it ended, I texted you and went on a rant. And one of the things I said to you is the Jeff Loeb TV division was better than the Kevin Feige TV division, which is crazy because I don't know whatever pissing match they were in during that era of Kevin Feige running the movies and Jeff Loeb running the TV show. Jeff Loeb's TV universe intertwined way better than what we've been handed.
To be fair, Jeff Loeb also knew he was going to intertwine everything, and he knew he only had the Defenders.
He also made active attempts to intertwine it with the movies. They had several episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. where, like, they had to clean up the aftermath of Thor Dark World. Nick Fury's in the pilot episode. It got to the point where, like, okay, he's intertwining things, but then Kevin Feige just ultimately shut it down. So basically, the most interwoven stories you got with Jeff Loeb's television division was let's mention the events, but not actually show anybody from them or add them to it, which really just felt like Kevin Feige saying, this is my ball and you're not allowed to have it.
Exactly. And it's just disappointing. Altogether, yeah, I mean, I'm playing nice right now.
You are, because it's extremely disappointing, because here's a guy that said, hey, I have a ball that you can't play with, and then he was given the full court, and he's still only playing on half a court. He's not intertwining it like you would think he would, given that he has all the pieces on the chessboard now. I'm making way too many metaphors. Go on.
I mean, it's just like you had an opportunity to really build Kang up. You had an opportunity to push the narrative of who is coming, but instead you still relied on the same trope of it goes back to the one man, the man behind the curtain. And it's like, we need to go past that. Who are the other variants of Kang? What can these Kangs do? If you really want to push the Secret Wars and Secret Wars, you got to start pushing who Kang is. And they're not pushing it. They're keeping him in the dark, in the shadows. And by the time we get to his like full arc, it's just going to be, oh yeah, all these little small things, yeah, they don't matter anymore. Well, and that's what I'm afraid of.
What's driving me nuts, and to his credit, he did it very well in the Infinity Saga, where he would build these characters, and he would help build and guide them in only a 2-hour span. He has now been given the opportunity to take like every new character they keep introducing, except for the one movie they probably should have made a TV show. They're giving them 6 episodes to build this character and their origin stories and kind of like why they're going to matter. Now, they did it with Hawkeye because it's Kate Bishop's story. Ms. Marvel with Kamala Khan, which, to her credit, and we'll talk about this in a future episode, she's now integrated into the movies. So that might be the first time where television fully impacted a movie. Whereas Wanda, I hate to keep shitting on that show, but everything that happened in WandaVision really didn't matter for Doctor Strange 2. You could have easily taken her loss of vision in Endgame and Infinity War and made that the cause of why she was dimension hopping.
Exactly.
The only
children with vision, and those were her children.
Yeah, like, you could easily use that, and they've done shit like that with dialogue in the past. But to sit there and have like your greatest strength in the first saga be your weakness in the second saga, it's annoying because it's like, no, we know you can character build. The unique selling point is you're not DC, and you can make these things matter by intertwining them. And he does a little bit of it, and I think he leaves enough of an open-ended question on most things that he can go back and say, no, that was always the plan. I don't think he has a fucking plan.
Do you? Yeah, I don't think so. Because in reality, you could kill Kang off. Especially with all the Jonathan Major drama, you can say that's it, we're going to revamp the entire Phase 5.
Every project has basically said, okay, except for Ant-Man and Quantumania, with their post-credit scene. But you take away that post-credit scene, every project has put like a nice bow on whatever variant of Kang you were dealing with. They're like, okay, that Kang was the big bag of Quantumania, and that's it. They handled it. He doesn't have to come back. Which sucks, because I want to see Kang. Like, he can be a Thanos-level threat. And it really feels like they just want you to be like, he is, but we're not going to really give you a reason as to why. Whereas Thanos is like, no, if he gets these fucking stones, we're fucked.
So let me give you this thought process here. Do you think eventually it's going to get to the point where we build the expectation that the Avengers or any Marvel superhero can beat Kang, but every time he gets beaten, he comes back a little bit stronger than before, to the point where he becomes unstoppable?
So I think, at least to expand on that point, I think the way they're going to go with him being a threat is every time they've encountered him, it's taken more than one to take on one. Yeah. Right? So you had Loki and Sylvia to take on He Who Remains, who orchestrated his death, essentially. So I wouldn't really have called him a threat. Kang the Conqueror, you had Janet Van Dyne, Hank Pym, Ant-Man, Wasp, and Cassie have to take him out. And a little, if you want to throw out a bone, MODOK as well.
Yeah.
So the threat being all the Kangs going, oh, okay, we're going to work together. Which then maybe like it fractures the team, and the Kang dynasty is them fighting different versions of Kang throughout time, like Rama Tut, the the other two, I can't think of them off the top of my head, and then ultimately Kang the Conqueror. If you just exclude the whole Jonathan Majors mess, which I think they're going to get past it. I don't think it's going to stop them. Disney has a way of like getting by that stuff, whereas like every other studio seems to fail.
Yeah.
But I think that's what they're trying to build it as an expectation of like, look, it takes 3 to 4, we'll say Avenger level heroes to take out one. You now have a whole dynasty to take care of.
Yeah.
But my problem is there's only one guy that knows about him right now. Maybe, okay, well, 5 people who know about him. And it's the cast of Ant-Man and Wasp. Loki's out of the picture. We haven't even talked about Loki, the finale yet. We're pissing and moaning about where the future's going.
Because Loki was pitched as the future.
It was the linchpin. It really set up the space between the multiverse and how these all could collide. So let's give credit where credit's due. This was a beautiful Loki story.
You're being way too nice. It was not a beautiful Loki story.
In the sense of how they do character arcs in the MCU, it is the picture perfect MCU ending. You start at one end of the spectrum, you ended up at the other end. It happened with Tony, it happened with Cap, it happened with Natasha, and now it's happening with Loki. Maybe Thor will get there. But Loki started off as a straight up villain, arrogant, egotistical, and selfish. He ended selfless, empathetic, and reluctantly taking the throne, which is a beautiful arc for him. From the grand scheme of things, it fucking sucked because we were expecting more out of this for the multiverse. And I think that's where a lot of my bitterness lies, is the fact that we were expecting such a larger picture. And they went, nope, we're going to zoom in on Loki to finish this. Which, the show's called Loki, so I guess you can't be too pissed off. How did you feel about it? Because you clearly disagree with it being a nice Loki story.
I mean, I can respect what you're saying, that Loki's on the other side of the spectrum. I feel on a storyboard wise, the Loki the TV show, it fails to deliver like the triumph, the penultimum of we did this. And because right now it's just all right. And the thing that pisses me off is it went back to the ending of season 1, and Loki was like, all right, I now know what to do. But it's not, the payoff isn't there.
So do you think
Loki's sacrifice isn't paid off in the end?
Well, do you think the payoff that they did do is hampered because of our anger towards the greater picture?
No, I because what's going to end up happening is Loki is going to have to come back at some point.
Well, I think you're the one who said it when we were talking, like, because we have a whole Basement Protocol group that talks about this shit in chats and stuff like that. But you and I are kinda,
those fuckers. I hope you're listening.
You and I are kind of at the core of like leading the front on this, and I think you and I talked about this, that they're going to come. The Avengers or whatever team that is going to end up at the end of time. Yeah. And at the end of time is now Loki instead of a Kang variant, which they're going to be expecting a Kang variant. And I think you specifically said Thor is going to end up there.
Yeah, Thor has to end up there, and he's going to see Loki, and it'll be a heartwarming. That will be the better payoff when Thor can recognize Loki as selfless. That will pay off in the end. But if we don't get Thor recognizing Loki at any point in time, there's no payoff. As a viewer, as a watcher, as a storyboard, there is no big payoff. It's just because Kang's going to fuck it up.
You're not, yeah. You would think that's like that would be the payoff for Thor, and we ran with it through this whole season. The quote from the director of like, "Hey, I think ultimately the story is Thor and Loki have to reunite one day." And you and I were kind of assuming like, okay, that's where they're heading with this season. Loki's going to return, warn Thor, and that's how we set everything up. Now it feels like the director's hinting at like that's probably the end of the Multiverse Saga, or towards the end of it, where those two will reunite. Maybe Thor 5 if they get to it.
If they get to Thor 5, that is exactly where Thor 5 will end.
Yeah, which is kind of hard to see right now, given that Thor 4, Love and Thunder, set up a confrontation between him and Hercules, which would have nothing to do with the Multiverse Saga.
Not unless Kang comes up and just destroys Hercules in the first 5 minutes.
Oh, you can't do that to fucking Roy Kent. It's a waste of Roy Kent. Why would you say something like
that?
They
did with Guardians 3 with what's his face?
Basically they backed themselves into an Adam Warlock corner.
Yeah, it was like Adam Warlock has to show up. He's only in it for like the first 5-10 minutes.
I would really like to pick their brain when all this is done and be like, did you have plans for Adam Warlock in Infinity War? Or like, what the fuck? Because that really felt like a pivot of like, oh no, they were created by the High Evolutionary and stuff like that. But we're digressing. The perfectness of the Loki story arc that I at least appreciate, I'm not happy about it. I can appreciate it though, is that through the comic run, Loki, or Agent Loki run, I think it is, and I got to fully admit, did not read it, but I do know of its arc that he ends up as the god of stories. I think that's what they were going with here, because now he is overseeing the timelines and giving them all a chance to grow and figure out the world on their own, which is very different from the Loki we were introduced to back in 2009 or 10, whenever he made his debut. I just, again, I think a lot of so let's take a look at the episode as a whole, because the finale is, I'm not going to lie, I was entertained. I was sucked in. I was enjoying it all the way up until it was over. It was just left there of like, come on, we're not going to fucking expand the multiverse again. But I really liked the episode. How did you feel about the episode? Like, let's set aside you were bored?
I was bored.
Really?
Yeah.
Explain.
Because the running the episode back, Loki time slips back to Victor Timely about to go down.
Okay.
So, and it's just him going back in time, going further back in time to fully understand what needs to get done. And I said this earlier in season 2, which was, there's not supposed to be time in the TVA. TVA is supposed to be outside the bounds of time and space. Okay. So the fact that Loki, in a sense, keeps going further back in time at the TVA, just, I don't know. It just shatters my illusion that the TVA can control all time if time still has control at the TVA.
Okay, that's fair. Because it does kind of create a plot hole of the TVA sits outside of time. But I think, and kind of with the Renslayer ending, I think the TVA is its own timeline. So it was its own timeline that kind of ran parallel with the sacred timeline. And basically what would happen is anytime there's a branch, let's bring that variant over to this timeline where it's TVA and only TVA. And they'll control the branches and stuff like that. Because at the end, you see the Renslayer. We're jumping all over the board on this episode, but it sparks a lot of emotion. Yeah. Renslayer is on what we'll call it the dumpster. I don't know what the hell they actually called it. I've heard people say it. Don't remember what it was, but where Goliath is.
It is the last second. It's like the last second on the timeline.
Yeah, so she's there and she's staring down Goliath, presumably because she turns purple. But a little bit of the grass clears back, and you see the TVA logo, which makes me think if you can prune the entire TVA, it must have been its own timeline, per se. Which makes sense, especially if he just ran it parallel. And then just it's two streets going towards the He Who Remains end of time. I really enjoyed the way they montaged the beginning of him trying to troubleshoot. I thought it was funny. I laughed. I was hooked. I was enjoying it. Maybe where I started falling out of love with it a little bit was when Victor Timely basically says you can't you can't solve for infinite when it came to the Loom expansion and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, okay, so this is supposed to break, which at least at that point in the episode is like, cool, this is how we're getting to the multiversal war. Not cool, this is how we're going to lose Loki and really not explain what the multiversal war is going to be.
Yeah.
Did you fall out of it like immediately when they started doing the montage, or was there a certain point where you're like, okay, I'm not feeling it. This is the moment that really killed it.
I'm gonna be honest, it just killed it really early on for me. It's like the Family Guy joke where Peter just like he trips, he falls on the edge of the curb, and he just goes for like 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Like it to me, it's like, yeah, there's different scenes that happen, but you don't get missed minutes, you don't get Renslayer, you don't really get Victor Timely, you don't get OB, you get none of the cast of season 2. None of them played an important role at all. It was Loki, Sylvie, He Who Remains.
I would even say Sylvie wasn't a big player in it. The only time her and Mobius were big players is when Loki clearly already made up his mind.
Yeah.
But went to talk to them. So they gave them like a very impactful moment for I guess more or less for us to care about them, because it seems like those are the two that are going to move on in the Multiverse Saga in Loki's absence. But to your point, nobody mattered for like the first 30 to 35 minutes. So basically they jump back to the He Who Remains section of this Loki series, we'll say season 1. And that interaction, how did you feel about that? Because I enjoyed that He Who Remains, because like you knew he had the greater picture, but the moment Loki kind of pauses time and like kind of like turns to him and goes, "You're gonna do anything about this?" And he stops and goes, "Oh, so you figured it out."
Yeah,
that was pretty cool to me.
It was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm a very huge fan of Jonathan Majors in this series. Mm-hmm. He's a great actor. He plays his parts wonderfully. Again, I have to dive back into the writers though. Remember at the end of this first season of Loki, he dies, and we all started speculating of like, oh, who's the next Kang variant? And like when he dies, you can see the sky change colors at the same time as it would in what was it? The Spider-Man movie or whatever movie that just recently came out. Like you can time it perfectly, and none of that mattered. Like,
yeah, you're not wrong there.
Speculation at the end of season 1 just doesn't matter anymore. Like there is, besides season 2 of Loki, anything that happened in season 1 of Loki had zero repercussions. Again, you're back in the same, like Loki's within its own bubble inside the MCU, which again is on the writers, which is why again I get a little upset. But I love the Jonathan Majors acting. I liked how he goes, oh, wait a second. Like you said, right? Loki going, what makes you think we've had this? We didn't have this conversation before. Shows that Loki just kept going and going and going until he could find the solution to what he wanted, which is almost saying out loud is exactly the plot to Doctor Strange for the first movie.
Yeah, where the Dormammu, where he just kept running it back until basically.
Dormammu, I'm here to bargain Dormammu, and just keeps dying. It's like that's exactly what keeps happening to Loki. If you really want to like nitpick.
Yeah, he's basically running through that loop until he finds the out, and basically he's given 2 options: just go back to the status quo, deal with it, which ultimately means the death of every character we've dealt with in the Loki series, because they're all variants and they're going to reset. So in theory, I know you're a little annoyed that like nothing fucking mattered, but if they went that route, literally nothing mattered.
Which I would have been fine with. At least we could pin the big bad cat. We would know who to start with when it came to the movies.
I don't. I don't know. I think I'd be really pissed off for wasting about 12 hours of my life across 12 weeks. Like, you knew I was hot after it was over, and
Yeah.
I've clearly calmed down since we've recorded this. But I don't think I would have came into this with a cool head if they went, hey, none of the 2 seasons mattered. It was just an endless loop that was going to get back to the point that you have no control over your fate.
I think it would have been even better, right? Like, right. So you stick with the status quo, but it pits Loki against He Who Remains. Right?
Yes.
You,
Well,
you get the sacrificial deaths of Sylvie, OB, Owen Wilson's character. Like if He Who Remains just starts slaughtering everyone at the TVA, and Loki escapes with everything being the status quo, like again, you now can pinpoint who the Kang you want to focus on in the movies. Like, how does this tie back to Kang? Like, is it He Who Remains? Like, it would add more weight.
Would Loki escape though? If he just let it explode and let it play out? Because technically he'd be erased. If he let it play out, it would go back to the, I guess.
But technically, he's not a variant, though.
He is.
Technically not. Because, again, if you go back to this season 1 finale, Kang wrote that entire path. He was always destined. It was always destined for the events of Endgame to create a different version of Loki to go to the TVA.
Yeah, I guess so. There's a lot of plot holes in this damn show if you think about it.
Yeah.
Like, we have to fill in the gaps to justify certain things that happen.
Yeah. That's also what our brains do when we watch things. We have to suspend our disbelief.
Well,
right?
that's the problem, because like you're really suspending your disbelief because you're looking at the larger picture of a multiverse saga, and then basically every one of these fucking Disney Plus shows ends with, no, it was just character building the character. You know, if you read into just the title, you got what you bought, type thing.
Yeah. You got a Loki show. You got a Scarlet Witch show. You get a
Ms. Marvel, She-Hulk.
You got a Samuel L. Jackson show. Like that's all it is.
So basically, the show ends with the happy ending where Loki makes the ultimate sacrifice of like, I'm doing this for my friends. I got to be the one that gets like fixes this loom by breaking the loom and holding everything together. And at that point, we see that the TVA continues on, but it's more inclusive, goes into like, oh, we're going to be a full-blown democracy type thing. Mobius kind of takes a break from the TVA. I don't think he's fully done. Sylvie goes back to assumingly eating burgers in 1985, and Renslayer kind of gets a shitty fucking ending and was irrelevant for most of the season. How did you feel about the end cap on most of the stories?
I mean, again, dissatisfied. Renslayer being at where Goliath is, and to be fair, we never see her die, so she can come back in a future MCU project.
But it's so good a variant.
Yeah,
because now every branch timeline is being allowed to exist.
Exactly, and now you also go back to Miss Minutes. She gets rebooted at the end, but it leaves it very open-ended. Will she be a part of the new TVA, or will they not be able to integrate her into the new TVA?
Yeah, because they do leave it open-ended with like, oh, well, she won't try to murder us again. He went, like, he just kind of shrugged his shoulders at it.
I will say this. The one interesting thing, and I don't think it was accidental, and I'm curious to know your thoughts. When you saw Obi open the box of the new handbook and it panned to Victor Timely making candles, did you have like a sinking feeling that Obi would drop that handbook off to Victor Timely?
I honestly didn't know where they were going with that. Because I don't understand how that branch timeline didn't exist. Given that the fact that Loki went and saved every branch timeline, that branch timeline should still exist out there. And there should be a Victor Timely that's very, very well aware of the TVA and very
Unless they
advanced.
pruned it, because the TVA is now to prune any He Who Remains variants.
I guess that makes
That
sense.
is their
They are
objective.
they are keeping tabs on them.
So
it would have been interesting if the new book got dropped off still. I think it was kind of a miss to just kind of basically, to me, that scene is just Victor Timely's done. You're not going to get any more Victor Timely in the variants that show up or anything like that. They basically put the cap on Victor Timely.
yeah, and again, I think it's just my brain looking for straws to prop this show up in the MCU catalog, which would have been okay. Well, now this explains how Kang becomes more powerful in the next episode of the Kang trilogy or Kang saga, whatever you want to call it.
The running rumor, and I think I've never seen it confirmed by a good source, is that Mobius is showing up in Deadpool 3. And again, I haven't seen it on what I would consider one of the credible sources that I look at.
Yeah.
It's being posted by a lot of people and assumed by a lot of people that he's in Deadpool 3 and that the TVA will have some kind of impact into the Deadpool 3, which, given the news we got about how Marvel's dropping movies, Deadpool 3 is the only thing coming out in 2024. And if that is the fucking pinpoint of this is how the multiversal thing starts, never would have fucking called that in a million years.
I mean, I at this point, I kind of feel like Marvel is they're going to try pivoting real fast, real quick, and in a way that makes us go, "Oh, this is a much better storyline than the Kang storyline." I truly, honestly believe they might not be going the Kang route.
That's part of the problem too. When you had the Infinity Saga, you had one saga. It was the Thanos Infinity Stones. That was the end game. And that's why they called it Endgame. If you look at this phase 4, 5, and 6, they're building 3 or 4 different storylines here that are running concurrently throughout this saga. One is the multiversal Kang War dynasty that's going on. The other is the street level defenders, more or less. Like, you've got the Daredevil storyline with Echo and what they call the street Avengers, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't say. I changed your call word and everything. I hate Amazon. Anyway, you're welcome, people, for getting an insight into my life. They're also running the Young Adventures or New Avengers storyline, and we'll talk more about that at a later date. But they're setting up a new Black Widow, a new Hulk with Scar from She-Hulk, technically She-Hulk, Kate Bishop, Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan, and then Cassie Lang. So you have a bunch of and Love from Thor and Love and Thunder. Like, you've got a bunch of these younger Avengers running around. You've got new Avengers running around that'll take the place of like Tony and Cap and stuff like that. So you've got like all these big storylines that should intertwine characters running, which is it's funny if you think. God, I think if you look at the Multiverse Saga and we sit here and we say it's a convoluted mess because 4 or 5 things are running at the same time, that is what the multiverse is. If they want this chaos, and that's what their like big fucking reveal at the end of it is like, you thought all this shit was chaotic and there was no plan, but everything tied into one little bow. That was the point of it. Fuck them, for starters. Secondly, God, it's fucking genius. It's annoyingly genius. They've got a lot going on, and at the same time, nothing going on. You don't know where anything's going. Our next project for Marvel is Echo, right? And I assume you and I will probably end up covering that. That's a 1-day dump of 6 or 8 episodes.
They're doing a 1-day dump?
First of its kind. I don't know why.
Oh,
To me, that instills they had no confidence in the series, especially given that a lot of their content is backed up due to the strikes. You think they would have been like, no. Not only did we pivot away from Thanksgiving, but we're also going to weekly release it. I have no idea where that's going. Daredevil, you would not assume is going to tie in these huge storylines to whatever he's doing. Didn't
I
expect
can see,
Deadpool.
I can see Daredevil tying in. Well, it will tie in She-Hulk, which will tie in Scar.
Okay.
I can see Daredevil tying into the new Black Widow.
You would think right now you've got like 6 or 7 heroes operating in New York. You have a
Yeah,
Spider-Man that nobody knows it's Peter Parker.
yeah,
And he's back to street level, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
yeah.
You've got Daredevil, you got Echo, you've got Kate Bishop, Hawkeye. Ms. Marvel is over in Jersey City.
Yeah.
You've got, like you said, She-Hulk, Scar, but they're over on the West Coast, more closer to like Cassie Lang and stuff like that.
But he is dating She-Hulk.
Yeah, they did end it that way.
So
Go ahead.
So this is me like pinning my hopes up on the wall again. But Echo could be their Hail Mary of getting people reinvested if it does tie things together.
God damn it. This is unrelated, but that's why that stupid device keeps going off. Because last time we were talking about computers, like nonstop talking about computers. So I changed the call word on the device. Yeah. I switched it to the next show that's coming up as the call word. And that's why it keeps going off. Change your series name, damn it. It's really hard to see the path forward. They came back and told us that everything's changing up. Like we said, what's next is in January. I'll let you say the name of the show.
Echo?
Yes. And then Daredevil is supposed to be in May. I would imagine that's getting pushed back because they weren't done filming that, and they threw a lot of it out to restart. Deadpool will be in July. They moved the Thunderbolts. Oh, no. They moved Captain America 4 to February of 2025.
Woo, birthday gift.
Thunderbolts are in May of 25. And then I think at the end of that year, it's Fantastic Four. I don't know if they announced Fantastic Four yet or not. But those are let's take Fantastic Four out of it. None of every other project really doesn't tie into the multiverse part. It ties into a lot of street level issues.
So then something that I read today was, do you think that they're doing a like Earth 616 Avengers, like certain Avengers or Young Avengers versus Kang Prime and the other people that he picks from 616?
Well, the weird thing is so you have the 2 Avengers movies, which is technically part 1, part 2. I assume the titles are going to change because it happened with Infinity War and Endgame. Yeah. They ended up changing those titles. But Secret Wars is a Doom storyline that picked the best warriors from various universes to battle in like a battle dome, right? Mm-hmm. Which makes sense if you're piggybacking off the Kang. Like, it could be like, all right, we beat Kang, but now what do we do with everybody here? And Doom swoops in and goes, boom. Unless they're using Kang as all right, battle it out and I'll choose which ones stay. Like a He Who Remains type thing comes back into power. Whatever they do there. I think, and it's given when we recorded this, given the fact that I don't want to spoil anything for you about the Marvels, you're on the right track. There will be we'll say multiple Avengers teams.
Yeah.
I assume one gets fucked up, which brings in the B team. What the fucking A team whatever the A team fucking looks like, no clue. because the A team in like any other fucking medium would have been Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, like the original guys, right?
Yeah.
And you're down 2.5, well, 3.5. You don't have Natasha, you don't have Tony, you don't have Steve, and Hulk isn't Hulk
And you don't have Jerry Rayner anymore because he
in real life.
In real life, he decided to do some stupid shit.
Hawkeye's there, but like
he's not going to be perched up on top of a building.
Yeah, well, he will be just in a wheelchair. He's the new Xavier. It's weird that you look at Loki and how it ended, and you thought you were going to get more answers to where's our path heading, and all it did for that grander picture is just to say, yes, there is a multiverse. Even though, if you looked at Loki and how it began with no, there's not a multiverse. We prune all the branches. And it ended with him going, I gotta let it happen. We're gonna have a multiverse. And that's really all they bring to the table, aside from adding maybe Mobius and Sylvie to the larger pool of characters to pull from.
Well, now that you say that,
yeah.
Like, listen to what you just said, though, right? So we went from no multiverse, it's just the sacred timeline, to now allowing the different branches.
Well,
that does nudge it in a step.
Does. And to also to that point, they released a book for the Marvel Cinematic Timeline. I highly doubt it has any of 4, 5, and 6 in it. And if it does, it's very minimal. But it'd be interesting to see, like, does Loki take place the same time Doctor Strange is dealing with the spell in New York? And the same time the Marvels is dealing with their fucking issue is? And the same time, like, all these other, like, Doctor Strange 2, where he's bouncing around. Like, where do these points happen? Because a lot of these things have very minimal multiverse issues, but they could all be connected to what Loki's doing in the finale. If you think about it, basically accepting like there is going to be a multiverse. All right, well, one of those strings is probably whatever the fuck Strange and Peter fucked up in No Way Home. One of them's probably related to whatever got fucked up in the Marvels. One's probably related to whatever the fuck's going on in Deadpool, because Deadpool is allegedly pulling from every Fox property that they had and bringing back all those actors, including some of the MCU actors. Like Deadpool, it really feels like it's going to be the linchpin. I'm not getting my high hopes up. I'm absolutely done doing that.
Until it comes to opening night of Deadpool 3 and we're sitting in the theater with our popcorn.
Do you know how much it hurts me? Like, we do these shows, and we'll wrap it up after this because we're running long. Because this was more than just the Loki finale.
Yeah, well, it should have. It does make sense that this takes a long time.
Yeah, so like, I love Deadpool as its own entity. I love Deadpool 1. I love Deadpool 2, the movie. Why? Because there's no implication of a larger picture. Now, it's smack dab in the middle of the fucking multiverse saga. And I don't want speculation and hopes and dreams of what everything could be to ruin Deadpool 3. Do you know how sad I'm going to be if I walk out of Deadpool 3 and be like, God damn it, Kang wasn't in it? I shouldn't care if Kang is in it. I love Deadpool. I'm there for Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman teaming up. But there are multiverse implications in the movie, given that, like, as far as we know, Logan is dead. How the fuck does Logan end up with Deadpool? It's going to have some multiverse thing. Is Cable in it? Who was also a multiverse jumper, if you think about it. Like, there's so many implications. And I don't... Every time we do a Podern Nerd, and I'm sure everybody who does anything that follows these episodic adventures or these movies and speculates and have fun doing all this, it's ruining the final product because you built up expectations so high.
That's when you just do what I do and you just pretend the world doesn't exist.
Well, that's why we took a couple days before we recorded this.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't come in and just completely trash it. Loki season 1 and season 2, I did enjoy. I enjoyed the trip. I enjoyed doing these podcasts with you. And I look forward to going through this vicious circle of self-abuse on the next one.
Yeah.
And actually, when we do the Marvels, because speculation will run wild in that. Overall thoughts for you, because like I said, I enjoyed it as a project. I'm going to set aside my expectations of the larger picture to give it a fair take. What did you think of Loki as a whole?
I mean, it goes hand in hand with all the MCU TV shows. I always go in expecting a different product than what's always delivered.
Mm-hmm.
Like the TV shows that I watch and the TV shows that you and I watch are completely different. And especially when it comes to like watching movies passively, it's always going to be drastically different. So I was expecting more of something with a little bit more substance to it.
Mm-hmm.
I felt that the whole season for Loki 2 was just, it could have been written better, and it just disappoints me because it feels rushed. It felt rushed, and to be fair, like, so it actually broke today that episode 5 had to get rewritten like over the course of a weekend because Disney nuked it.
I did see that because they had other plans in store for it, and basically they had to go redo everything for the characters instead. Which
So now
I feel for them then at that point.
Yeah. And as people, you and I who are on projects, like on a professional side, you never really can say the things that you want to say. So is this writer trying to say Disney nuked the entire idea for season 2?
The
And they
only
had to
person
rewrite over the course of a weekend?
The only person who gets a pass at fucking shit talking something and ultimately gets their version released is Zack Snyder.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
That is not the fucking movie I made. Release my 4-hour fucking atrocity so I can at least be redeemed that way. Meanwhile, the Suicide Squad doesn't get the same. David Ayer's just getting fucked. To that point, yeah. Like, you had an idea of where 5 was going, which ultimately probably changes 6. It's weird to say it was rushed. Again, I think it's the ultimate Disney Plus show problem where like you're cruising along, enjoying episodes 1 through whatever, and then you get to like the final 2 or the final 1, and it's like, what the fuck? Like, there's so many open-ended questions, and then later on you get the interviews where they tell you shit doesn't matter, or that shit was never on their mind to begin with, like the whole Mephisto thing that went through WandaVision, and the writer coming out like, we never planned for him. Don't know where that came from. Don't know why people brought it up. Don't know why it happened. And it's like, how's that fair? Like, I get it to an extent of like, yeah, Apocalypse should probably be teaming up with Rama Tut. That'd be a fucking fanboy phenomenal. But at some point, you have to know when you're dipping into a certain lore of witchcraft and sorcery and manipulation, people will probably draw lines to Mephisto. So did you really know your source material enough to like go, or somebody should have raised the hand and like, hey, do you know what we're doing? Or do you know what this looks like to a viewer? So it's kind of weird that like you would come out 2 years later and like, now we had no fucking clue we were doing that.
Yeah.
Did you know the source material then? Because Mephisto does seem to fit in very well with what was going on with Agatha and Wanda. Or just don't open your mouth and say that in an interview.
Like, it's about knowing what to say and when to say, and when you're public facing.
Yeah. The only thing is, it made Eric Voss eat a lot of fucking crow.
Yeah,
and he's admitted it. He's like, now I got to go on the apology tour.
Yes, and to be fair, I'm going through the same thing with Goosebumps right now, because last week's episode I thought was the season finale, and so I turned it on. I'm sitting in the living room with Frank. The edible was hitting, and I'm watching the episode, and I turned to Frank and go, "This isn't Goosebumps." And then, like 20 minutes later, I turned to him again. I was like, "This isn't Goosebumps. Like, I don't know what this is." Because they took the formula from the previous, whatever, 5 or 6 episodes, and it was character building for the second to last episode.
Oh, so I gotta admit, haven't watched anything.
You should. It's a great show. I highly recommend just taking the time to watch it. It's mindless. It's fun. Like most episodes don't connect to each other. Like they connect to each other, but they don't. It's like watching a Marvel movie. Like the one episode will end, and like it'll end on a certain note, but then they don't reference it again until like an episode or two later.
Mm-hmm.
And it leaves you going, "What the fuck?" Like I need to know what happens next. It's literally like watching a Marvel movie for like 40 minutes. It's great.
So I'm gonna live it at the end of it when it doesn't go where I thought it was going. Way to keep getting my blood pressure up.
I mean,
anyway,
you gotta keep the heart pumping to lose weight, buddy. Like it's what we gotta do.
It's fair. Well, we're gonna call it quits there on Loki. Here on Podern Nerd. It's been a fun ride. I've enjoyed it. We've got a lot of other Podern Nerds in the pipeline, per se. Like he had said, Goosebumps is probably going to be one of them of a season 1 recap. We're also going to do a special Rick and Morty Podern Nerd just for one specific episode. It's season 7, episode 5. I thought it was a big one, so we should talk about it. We're going to be doing an Invincible Part A and Part B of season 2 recap. And then I believe Jarrett and Trish will be taking over in December to do Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Or something like that. It's Percy Jackson.
That's all that matters. We get Percy Jackson.
And I don't know who will do it with me, but we'll be doing Monarch, the Godzilla Monster Universe TV show premiering on Apple TV this weekend.
Tracy Padre want to do that one.
Oh, look at you. Look at you.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to end it then. So I've been Chris the Dace Man. Dace. He's been Cheever.
Woo!
Remember, basement dwellers, stick to the protocol. We'll see you next time on Podern Nerd.
Da 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 da. Loki season 2. Da 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 da.